Welcome back to Freedom Friday. Today we explore the life of one whom history has designated the first African martyr for the Christian faith. But I suspect many of us have never even heard of him. His name, Saint Maurice of Agaunum. Maurice was a high-ranking officer in the Roman army, commanding a legion. A legion could comprise between 4,000 to 6,000 soldiers. He and his legionnaires were recruited from the southern Egyptian province of Thebes. At the time, Egypt was a part of the Roman Empire, and Thebes was its southernmost province. So this was on the border between present-day Egypt and Sudan. The account affirms that all of the legionnaires in his legion, were Christians. Therefore, this was an African Christian legion in the army of the Roman Empire. At any rate, in 287 AD, Maurice and his legion were part of the Roman army headed by Maximian, commander of the army in Gaul, present-day France. This is the same Maximian who would become co-emperor with Diocletian. But for the present, he was on a campaign to put down insurgents in Gaul. On the night before a major battle against the insurgents, Maximian ordered his army to participate in a pagan ritual sacrifice to the Roman gods to ensure victory in the battle. Maurice, attempting to avoid obeying such an order which was contrary to his faith, moved his legion away from the main body of the army to a place called Agaunum, so as not to participate in the ceremony, or perhaps hoping that they would not be noticed. But that was not to be. Maximian ordered them to return and participate in the ceremony, but Maurice, along with 3 of his officers, refused. Maximian, no doubt enraged by this insubordination, ordered that the legion be decimated. Now, decimation was a specific punishment. It refers to a form of collective military punishment in which 1 in 10 soldiers in a unit were selected, often by lot, and executed by their own comrades. The purpose was deterrence through terror, shame, and restored discipline rather than routine judicial justice. The practice is most strongly associated with the Roman Republic and the early empire. It is the reason that the word decimate has come to mean major destruction. In spite of the devastating consequences, though, the African legion remained steadfast. The legion was decimated a second time. According to Bishop Eucharius of Lyon, before being killed, Maurice spoke to Maximian on behalf of his legion, and he said, "We are your soldiers, but we are also servants of the true God. We owe you military service and obedience, but we cannot renounce him who is our creator and master, and also yours, even though you reject him. In all things which are not against his law, we must willingly obey you, as we have done hitherto. We have taken an oath to God before we took one to you. You can place no confidence in our second oath to you if we violate the first oath to God. We have our arms in our hands right now, but we are not resisting because we would rather die innocently than live by any sin." And so when the night was over, Maurice and his entire legion lay dead. It is not known how many other African soldiers of Christ were decimated that night, but there's no doubt that they were there. Some historians doubt that the whole legion was destroyed since, they were on the eve of a major battle and would need as many soldiers as possible. Well, this may or may not be true. Nonetheless, Maurice himself became a much-loved saint throughout Europe with cathedrals and monuments named after him. Eventually, he became the patron saint of the so-called Holy Roman Empire. September 22 every year is still recognized as St. Maurice Day in a number of religious traditions. However, Maurice was never depicted as black until 1240 AD, over 950 years after his martyrdom. Before that, he was depicted as white. The cathedral at Magdeburg, Germany, was the first one to depict him as what he was, a black African. The idea of a black saint was unacceptable to European Christians, not because medieval Christianity lacked theological resources for honoring African holiness, but because entrenched systems of power increasingly depended on visual and symbolic hierarchies that aligned sanctity with whiteness. As European societies moved toward rigid racialization, especially in the centuries leading into the colonial expansion, religious imagery was quietly conscripted to normalize domination, rendering blackness incompatible with spiritual authority, purity, and divine favor. This resistance was rarely explicit or confessed. It operated instead through omission, erasure, and selective memory, revealing how systemic prejudice, especially in a religious context, often exerts its greatest influence, not through open denunciation, but through what a culture finds impossible to imagine as legitimate or sacred. Philippe Wamba, writing for the third edition of the Encarta Africana, notes, the shift towards representation of St. Maurice as a black man was also doubtlessly encouraged by the growing public prevalence of Moors in the entourage of the German Emperor Frederick II, a leader with a special affinity for and fascination with Africa. Frederick employed African political advisors and soldiers and thus helped to expose and accustom Europeans to the physical appearance of Africans. His interest in and employment of Africans and Maurice's role as an effective political symbol led to more depictions of the saint as black. As the influence of the Holy Roman Empire grew, representations of Maurice as an African spread beyond Magdeburg and across Europe on into the 16th century. So, Maurice of Aganom, and this is likely a accurate portrait of him, the first black martyr, represents the core message of the gospel, that the color of our skin does not determine the authenticity of our faith. He bore witness to minds trapped in prejudice, guiding them to a deeper understanding of the equality of all people before God. He helped to pull the European out of the darkness engulfing that continent to catch a glimpse of the gospel's true light. Thanks for joining me for another Freedom Friday. Please remember to hit the subscribe button in YouTube. We appreciate your support. Until next week then, walk good, remember who you are, and stay faithful. This is Freedom Friday, where we tell the whole story.